Still Friday, June 24th, 2022. My name's Larissa, and this is the final installment of Patent Leather Jean, my 2020 Lenten novel, an original work of fiction by me. Chapter 10, probably going to take a couple days. Joan turned on the water in her kitchen sink and let it get as hot as it could. Then she began to methodically rinse out and scrub the accumulated pile of dishes. She muttered to herself as she let the water burn her hands. He called me Joan. That bitch wife of his must have put it in his mind. I'll show that little snot. I'll get her ass. She's not getting away with this. Not this time. Joan's hands were covered in soap suds, and she dropped her favorite coffee mug on the floor. It cracked into pieces. Now she was really angry and added this insult to her list of grievances against Jean. Shaking her hands in the air and looking at the ceiling, she cried out, "God damn you, Jean! God damn you, you little whore!" Joan opened the pantry, looking for the 151. She found it where she had left it and dug around in another cupboard for a tall glass. She pressed the glass into the ice dispenser on the refrigerator door and filled it halfway with crushed ice. Then she covered the ice with the rum and sat the glass on the counter while she dug around in the refrigerator for a Diet Coke. There were 2 cans left on the bottom shelf behind a bag of soggy, molded lettuce. She pulled 1 can and the bag of lettuce from the shelf and closed the door with her foot. Then, holding the bag of rotted veggies between her index finger and thumb as far away from her as possible, she dropped it in the trash, dripping rotted lettuce juice across the floor. The can of Coke had some remnants of rotted lettuce on the side. She gave the can a quick rinse under the tap in the now empty sink before she popped the tab and topped off her glass. She brought the glass to her lips and downed half of the drink in one long gulp. The ice chips pressed against her upper lip and left her old woman mustache damp. She wiped the moisture from her lip with the back of her wrist before taking another sip and placing the glass on the counter. Now she went to the utility closet to dig out a mop and bucket. This was the first time in 25 years that Joan had cleaned her own kitchen. Frank used to clean the house. He said he liked doing it, that it relaxed him. After Frank died, Joan had started hiring cleaning services. There had been a young gay man named Terrence. He did a great job, but Joan couldn't stand him. Gay men got on her nerves. Then there'd been Natalie. Natalie had been referred to her by someone other than Gertrude at the Widows' Support Group. One day, Joan caught Natalie going through an old photo album and hit the roof, firing the young woman on the spot. Then there had been Teresa. Teresa had worked for Molly Maids, and her English wasn't great. Joan had let her go after 2 visits because of the language barrier. Then one day, when she and Gertrude had been out and about, they stopped at Caribou Coffee for iced caramel mochas, and Joan happened to see a flyer on the community bulletin board for a housekeeper. She pulled the flyer off the board, folded it up, and shoved it in her purse. When she got home later, she called the number, and Doris had answered. Doris had been cleaning up after Joan ever since, at least until 6 weeks ago, when she finally quit. Joan had pretended she didn't care when Doris walked out the door, but after her car pulled away, Joan had panicked and actually cried. Now, standing in her dirty kitchen, unwrapping the new mop and unused bucket, Joan's eyes welled with tears once again. She opened a drawer in the center island and found a fresh pack of Virginia Slims. She tore off the plastic wrapper and stuck a long, thin cigarette in her mouth while she rifled through the drawer again, looking for a lighter or matches. Not finding either, she slammed the drawer shut and scanned the kitchen. A pink lighter was on the window ledge behind the sink. Joan lit the cigarette and traded the lighter for her drink. She took a long, exaggerated drag and exhaled, then chugged the rest of the drink before mixing herself another. Glass was mostly ice anyway, she reasoned with herself. As she mopped the floor, she left dirty footprints. Disgusted, she stomped up the stairs and dug around in her closet until she found the flip-flops she saved for wearing in the shower whenever she traveled, and stuffed her swollen feet into them. The plastic thongs cut across the tops of her feet, and her polish was chipped. Maybe Gertrude would want to go get mani-pedis later. Joan stomped down the stairs, flip-flops making fart noises all the way. After she finished mopping the floor, she lit another cigarette and wiped down all the counters and put away random items sitting about. Then she put the pieces of her broken mug in a paper bowl and sat it on the center island before opening the door to the basement and heading down to attend to the laundry. For the past 6 weeks, she'd been buying new bras, panties, and socks instead of doing the wash. Now, the rest of her wardrobe having been worn, she decided she would bite the bullet and wash her clothes. The piles all over the floor smelled. There had been a night when she and Gertrude had gotten pretty drunk, and Joan had thrown up on herself on the drive home. The smell of festering vomit was making her gag, so she abandoned the idea of separating the clothes and just grabbed a mound and stuffed it in the machine. She poured a cap of detergent over the mix of clothes and towels and ran a heavy-duty load on cold water. Then she trudged back up the stairs looking for her drink and cigarettes. She found them by the kitchen sink, and decided to wash her hands first. The phone rang. Hardly anyone ever rang her on the landline, only Gertrude, telemarketers, and her son, Tim. Joan stuck her cigarette between her lips and picked up her drink and headed in the direction of the phone in the TV room. She sat down on the couch and set the drink down on the side table next to the phone before picking up the receiver. "Hello?" Joan answered. "Hello, is this Mrs. Randall, Mrs. Francis Randall?" a strange man's voice inquired. Who is this?" Joan was hesitant. No one had called her Mrs. Francis Randall since the funeral. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am. I'm calling from LAX in LA. A bag was recovered with a wallet and an address book, and your name was on the inside of the address book as emergency contact." "Do you know a Robin Randall?" the strange man continued. "Why, yes. Robin is my son. Is there a problem?" Joan asked. "No, ma'am, no problem. We're just trying to confirm who the owner of the bag is so we can return it," the strange man went on. "Oh, well, it's not my bag, but it might be my son's. He does travel quite often, and I know he just got home recently," Joan explained, excited at the idea of being able to help her son. "Okay, ma'am, that's all we needed to know. Thank you," and the man hung up before Joan could say anything else. Joan looked at the receiver of the phone with bewilderment. It seemed like a strange call. She'd have to remember to ask Robin about it next time she saw him. Joan slumped back on the couch and looked over the TV room. It was a mess. There were used tissues on the table, a stack of magazines scattered on the floor, a couple plates with bits of old food, a full ashtray, a vase of long-dead roses molding, and a box with bits of styrofoam packing from the still only half-assembled IKEA bookshelf in the corner. Joan took a sip of her drink and puffed on her cigarette. She could hear the TV of the next-door neighbor through the wall of her condo. The unit on the other side had been vacant for the past 4 months after Tina had moved to Florida to live with her granddaughter and her family. Evidently, Tina had been a hoarder. After she moved out, the landlord had filled a trash hopper 3 times with debris from the tiny unit. Joan was relieved she owned her unit outright and didn't have to answer to a landlord. Frank's life insurance had covered it and then some, but sometimes she was a little jealous of the neighbors who rented. They didn't have to take care of any maintenance issues themselves. Joan finished her cigarette, then flicked on the TV while she started to clean up the disheveled room around her. She scrolled through the menu until she found her favorite show, Orange is the New Black, and hit play. Sometimes Joan fantasized about going to prison. From the show, it looked like an old lesbian like her could find true love or at least have a fling or two. But then again, she'd miss Gert, good old stupid Gert, and her too many cats and ugly moo-moos. Joan really did love that woman. Joan gathered up all the magazines and stuffed them in a garbage bag. Then she dumped the dried-out, molding dead roses in the bag as well and took the vase into the kitchen and rinsed it out. Gertrude had cut the roses from her garden for her after they had a silly argument over salad dressing at the Coney Island one evening. Joan finished tidying the TV room, then pulled out a vacuum cleaner she had never used before and fumbled with the handle. After she figured out how to work the handle and found the power switch, she vacuumed the whole room, including the furniture and curtains, using the hand attachment. Then she flopped back on the couch, sweat dripping down between her old sagging bag-shaped breasts, and picked up the phone to call Gert. It rang twice before Gert answered with a mouthful of something. It was approaching noon on Monday. Joan hadn't spoken to Gertrude since she had left on Saturday morning. "Joan, is that you?" Gertrude answered. "Yes, sweets, it's me. How'd you know?" "Well, I was starting to worry when I didn't hear from you yesterday, but I figured you were just tired. I'm glad you called." "Oh, yeah? What are you stuffing in your face? What are you stuffing your face with over there?" "Oh, can you tell? Cookies. I baked chocolate chip." "Figures. You and those cookies. Like you're someone's grandma or something." The comment stung Gertrude. Joan could be so inconsiderate, and after the interaction with Connor the other day, Gertrude was feeling a little tender. I just like cookies, is all," Gertrude responded. "Whatever. Save a couple for me, will ya?" Joan liked Gert's cookies, too. If she was honest, Gertrude had a talent for baking. "Sure. I have a whole dozen left. I'll put them in a tin for you." "Okay. Hey, you want to go get mani-pedis in a bit?" Joan offered. Yeah, that sounds good. What time are you thinking? Did you call Stacy and make appointments? No, I thought we'd just go walk in like last time. She's never busy on Mondays. I'll be there in about an hour. We can go have lunch and then go get our nails done, okay? Sure, that sounds good. I'll see you soon then? Yeah, see you soon. Joan hung up the phone without saying bye. She sat for a moment looking at the bookshelf in the corner and sighed. Maybe Robin would help her with that. Joan went back down to the laundry and swapped the load in the wash to the dryer, then stuffed another mound from the floor into the washer. She stepped back with her hands on her hips, surveying the remaining 8 mounds. This was probably going to take a couple days. Then she climbed the 2 flights of stairs to her bed and bath suite and looked herself over in the mirror. The jeans she had to put on that morning were a bit more snug than she would have liked, but that's why they were in the back of her closet and why she decided to finally do her laundry. The t-shirt she was wearing was cut awkwardly across her hips and drew attention to the bulge of her belly over the waistband of her jeans. She dug around in the closet until she found a calf-length tunic dress and changed into that. Then she slipped her feet into a pair of open-toed slides. Then she washed her face and hands, brushed her teeth and hair, and freshened her makeup before going down the stairs. Her bedroom was the only room she had taken any care to keep tidy after Doris had quit, so at least she was now pretty much done cleaning up. Maybe she could convince Robin to make a visit and help her with the bathrooms and that damn bookshelf. As Joan picked up her purse from the back of a chair at the dining table, she rubbed her right hand over her left shoulder and chest. She must have pulled it when she was using that vacuum. She coughed slightly as she locked the front door behind her and made her way to her Kia. She was actually feeling pretty good about having cleaned her house. The Kia was another story. It was full of all kinds of crap. Joan pulled a bag full of bags out of the trunk and decided to clean out the car as well. She stuffed the empty pop bottles and paper coffee cups and candy wrappers into a bag. Then she pulled a package of hand wipes out of her purse and wiped down the dash and steering wheel. She put the bag of trash on the floor on the passenger side and pulled out of the driveway. A couple blocks outside of her neighborhood, there was a gas station with a car wash. Joan pulled in and filled her tank. While the tank filled, she pushed the bag of trash into the receptacle in the center of the gas kiosk. When the tank was full, she opted for a car wash as well. First, she pulled the car up to a vacuum stand and vacuumed the seats and the floor before pulling into the wash station. The rag curtains swished back and forth, making suds across the windshield. Joan found herself feeling slightly dizzy and short of breath, but decided it was an effect of the car wash. When the light turned green, Joan pulled out of the car wash and into the sunshine. The sunlight glinted off the beads of water left sparkling on the hood of the car and blinded her for a second before she pulled out of the gas station and onto the road. Just before she reached the next intersection, she looked in the rearview mirror and saw her face looked strange. It was like the entire left side of her face was falling off or something. Her eye and mouth were drooping in a very strange way. Joan brought her hand to touch her face and passed out, falling forward on the steering wheel, plowing into the car in front of her, pushing them both into the intersection where traffic was coming in the other direction, and hit Joan on the driver's side. Cars piled up, horns honked. Joan never saw or heard any of it. When the EMTs finally arrived, Joan was already gone. Chapter 11. All these years. Jean tapped her brush on the side rim of the jar solvent next to her easel. Jean tapped her brush on the inside rim of the jar of solvent next to her easel, then pressed the bristles between the folds of a rag and placed it next to her palette on the table. Then she stepped back from the easel, holding her arms across her chest, squinting her eyes and biting her bottom lip. After they had gotten home from dinner with Mort, she thought the series was complete, but she had woken up Monday morning, having had a very vivid and somewhat upsetting dream, and had gone directly into the studio without even brushing her teeth. That had been around 5 a.m., and it was now a little after 1 p.m. The canvas before her contained a muted background with what looked like a window in the middle ground. The window had a smaller window centered near the top with a woman's face that appeared to be melting. The woman resembled Joan. Jean actually liked the composition of the piece so far, but the resemblance of the woman in the image to her mother-in-law was bothering her. Jean closed her eyes and focused, trying to recall as much of the dream as she could. Her mind's eye became soft, then it sharpened. In the dream, it was as if Jean had been driving a car. She focused on the inside of the car and found it looked like Joan's car, except it was actually clean for once. Then she looked out the side window of the car and saw an old olive-green Jaguar plow into the driver's side door. That was when she had woken up, with her heart pounding in her throat and ears. Robin had already showered and was pulling a polo shirt over his head in the bathroom when she sat up clutching her chest and panting. "Bad dream?" he had asked her, as he exited the bathroom looking for his socks, shoes, and belt. They were sitting on a chair next to the closet door. Jean had just watched him as he sat down and pulled on his socks and loafers, then stood up to put on and adjust the belt around his waist. He had then picked up his briefcase and approached her, smoothing the hair from her face before he kissed her on the tip of her nose and turned to leave the room. "Be home around 6 tonight," he had tossed over his shoulder as he walked out to leave for work. Jean had thrown her legs over the side of the bed, and her feet almost hurt as they touched the cold floor. Robin had turned on the air conditioning sometime in the middle of the night, more because of humidity than the heat. Jean pulled her robe from a hook on the wall and had charged directly into the studio and started painting. Now she opened her eyes to look at the fresh image once more and rolled her tongue around in her mouth, noticing it tasted metallic and still felt kind of furry. She stepped back from the painting, intending to head to the bathroom to brush her teeth and pee, but the phone rang, the landline, not her cell. Normally she would have left it go to voicemail, but instead she entered the bedroom, sat down on the edge of the bed she shared with Robin, and answered the call. "Hello?" Jean asked, feeling like her breath was so bad the person on the other end might be able to smell it. "Hello, is Mr. Robin Randall available?" a stern-sounding woman asked. "He's not available at the moment. May I ask who's calling?" Jean replied, in a stern voice to match. "Is this Mrs. Randall?" The woman softened some. "Yes, this is, but you still haven't told me who I'm speaking to," Jean replied, a little annoyed. "Mrs. Randall, we tried to reach Mr. Randall at work, but were unable. Is he by chance working from home today?" There was some urgency in the woman's voice and something else Jean couldn't quite place. "I'm not answering any questions until you tell me who you are and what you want," Jean said flatly. She was now starting to hope the woman on the other end of the line could smell her breath. "Mrs. Randall, I'm sorry. This is a difficult conversation. This is Officer Donna Cordona from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department." Jean interrupted the woman before she could say more. "Look, whatever my mother-in-law has told you is a lie. She has a real problem. If this harassment continues, we're going to consult our attorney," Jean said with defiance. Mort had given her his brother's card at dinner the other night after she and Robin told him about the recent door-knocking issue and the way the police had been treating Jean. "Mrs. Randall, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm calling because there's been an accident." Officer Cordona sounded apologetic. Jean's anger was mounting. "I'll say there's been an accident. The accident was anyone from the police department ever taking that woman seriously. I'm considering getting a restraining order and filing an official complaint with the county," Jean continued. Mort's brother specialized in cases of stalking, harassment, and family law. "No, Mrs. Randall, I don't think you understand. That is not going to be necessary. Joan Randall is dead. A little over an hour ago, she had a heart attack at the wheel of her car and was in a multiple car accident. 2 others are in critical condition at Beaumont. Your mother-in-law's body is there as well. Is your husband home?" Jean was stunned and stammered in response. Joan is dead?" "Yes, Mrs. Randall. I'm very sorry to tell you this way. I was hoping to speak with your husband first. He was listed as next of kin in her GP's files." Jean had a strange mix of emotions washing over her. Part of her thought this might be some prank being pulled by Joan and Gertrude. "Are you serious? Is this a prank?" Jean wasn't quite sure which was worse, this being real or a prank. Part of her had been looking forward to calling Mort's brother. "Mrs. Randall, I assure you this is no prank. Joan Randall suffered a major heart attack. She may have been dead before the other car hit her. We're still looking into what happened to figure it out for sure. Is your husband home?" "No, I'm sorry, he's not. He's at work. He's probably in meetings. He just returned home from some extended business travel, and he usually has meetings when he comes back from being overseas," Jean offered somewhat apologetically. "I see. Well, let me give you my number, and we would like both you and Mr. Randall to please come to the hospital as soon as possible to confirm her identification and answer a few minor questions." Jean fumbled on her nightstand for a pen and paper and wrote down the phone number Officer Cordova gave her, then assured the officer that one or both of them would be at the hospital as soon as possible. Then Jean thanked the officer for her time and hung up the phone. She immediately dialed Robin's direct office line. It rang twice before he picked up. "Babe, I can't talk right now. I'm just about to head to a meeting with the VP of Distribution and Sales," Robin said without saying hello. The number on the caller ID told him it was Jean calling. "I think you better excuse yourself and come home right now," Jean said with as little emotion as she could. "Babe, I can't. If it's another knock on the door, call the Clarks and see if Steve is home and come over to check it out. I have to get going," Robin said impatiently. "Robin, your mother died," Jean blurted. Robin dropped the receiver on the other end. Jean could hear him fumbling, trying to pick it back up. Finally, he lifted the receiver back to the side of his face. "What did you say?" he asked. "I said, your mother died. I just got a call from the county sheriff's. She had a heart attack and was in a car accident. She's at Beaumont, along with 2 other people in critical condition. They want us to come down as soon as possible," Jean explained in a soft and gentle voice. For a moment, Robin was silent on the other end. When he finally spoke, his voice was totally changed. He sounded defeated. "Okay, I'll meet you there. I'll be there as soon as I can." "Love, I've been in the studio painting all morning. I'm not even showered yet. It will probably take me 30 minutes or so to shower and throw something on before I can even think about leaving the house. I haven't even brushed my teeth." "That's fine. It's going to take me a few minutes to let everyone know and ask to reschedule my meetings. I'll see you at the hospital." "Okay, love. And Robin?" "What's that, babe?" Robin asked. "I'm so sorry. I love you," Jean said. "It's okay. She's probably much happier now. I love you too." And Robin hung up the phone without waiting to hear Jean's reply. Jean cradled the receiver and sat still for a moment with her palms pressed on her knees and stared at the wall. Joan was dead. Just a short while ago, she was ready to call an attorney and get a restraining order against the woman. Now that same woman's body was laying cold somewhere in a hospital room, and 2 other people were injured. Jean didn't know how to feel. She tipped her head to one side, looking up at the ceiling, trying to give a name to what her emotion was. It felt a lot like relief, like a huge weight had been lifted from her chest. Then a pang of shame pierced her heart as she thought of her poor husband. She got up, brushed her teeth, showered, and dressed quickly. Robin was standing in the lobby of the hospital when Jean arrived. He looked lost. Jean approached him with her hands extended towards him like he were a child. He fell into her arms and let her hug him hard for a long moment before pressing away from the embrace. "Hey there," Jean said to him. "Are you okay? Have you spoken with anyone yet?" "No, I just got here a couple minutes ago. I was waiting for you." "Okay, let's do this." Jean looped her arm through Robin's and led him to the information desk where an elderly man with leg braces and very thick glasses was seated. "How can I help you?" he offered in a frail but kindly voice. "My husband's mother has passed away, and we were asked to meet the doctor and police here," Jean explained matter-of-factly. "I'm sorry for your loss," the elderly man said to Robin, then continued to address Jean. "She probably came through the ER. Let me call and find out for you. What's the name?" he asked Jean. "Randall, Joan Randall." The elderly man's face registered surprise as he recognized the name. "You mean Frank's widow?" he inquired. "Yes," Jean replied, surprised. "Did you know her?" "Not really. I used to work with Frank. We were in the union together." "I see," was all Jean replied. The man picked up a phone and dialed some numbers and asked a few questions of some unknown person on the other end. When he was done, he hung up and looked at Robin and Jean sympathetically. "She's still in the ER. The police are there waiting to speak with you, and the doctor will be in when he can. One of the other people involved in the accident just passed also. I'm not really supposed to tell you, but since I knew Frank, I'm giving you a heads up." "Oh, okay, thank you." Jean nodded apprehensively as she spoke. "How do we get there from here?" The man leaned forward as far as he could in his seat and craned his neck to the right, pointing down a long hallway with a liver-spotted hand. "All the way down that hall there until the end, then take a right, then follow the signs. If you pass radiology, you've gone too far." Then he turned again to Robin, who had been silent the entire time. "And again, young man, I'm very sorry for your loss." Robin looked the man directly in his eye and with no emotion said, "Thank you, but there is no need to be sorry." The elderly man sat back in his chair and nodded his head knowingly in understanding. Robin pulled his arm from Jean's and stuffed his hands in his pockets as he turned and started down the hall. Jean looked from the elderly man to Robin and watched her husband walk away from her for a moment before hurrying to catch up to him. Coming from the direction they had entered the ER, a kind of back way, they were already past check-in but out of sight of triage area. A youngish black woman with perfect braids at a portable standing station just before the door to the ER took their names and gave them visitor passes. Jean peeled the sticker from its backing and pressed the tag over her heart with the palm of her right hand. Robin had done the same, but he had accidentally put his on upside down. It didn't matter. It was just a formality. The woman pointed toward an empty room with a very bright overhead light on inside. Jean nodded a polite thank you and followed Robin, who was already halfway to the room. A uniformed female police officer about the same age as Jean and Robin followed them in from a spot where she had been waiting for them to arrive. She addressed the couple, who were standing next to each other silently. Jean was leaning her head on Robin's shoulder, and Robin was standing with his hands still in his pockets, not blinking. "Mr. and Mrs. Randall?" the officer said, extending her hand toward Robin. Robin wasn't even looking at the officer, and Jean intercepted the handshake with an awkward motion. "Yes, we are the Randalls." "Mrs. Randall, I'm Officer Cordona. We spoke on the phone earlier. I'm sorry for your loss." She smiled, a small, brief smile at Jean as she shook her hand. The two women exchanged a moment of understanding that Jean was grateful for. "We don't know where your mother was headed, but we do know she had just pulled out of a gas station car wash onto DeQuinder and had a heart attack and caused a multiple-car pileup. Where your mother's car was hit on the driver's side door by—" Jean interrupted her. "Was it a vintage olive green Jag?" she asked. Officer Cordona looked at her with a questioning expression. "No, it was a brand-new white Mercedes from out of state. Why'd you ask that?" The officer prodded Jean, who now felt exposed and silly. She blushed as the officer and Robin both looked at her expectantly. "No, I just had a strange dream last night about being in a car accident like that, but I was hit by a vintage olive green Jag. It's nothing, a stupid coincidence. I shouldn't have asked." Jean waved her hand in dismissal of her own words in front of her face. The officer and Robin seemed satisfied with her answer. "I don't know if she had the heart attack and caused the accident, or if she had the accident and had the heart attack. Your mother had been drinking, Mr. Randall. In a strange way, she's lucky to have passed. Another man involved in the accident passed away just before you arrived. If your mother were still living, she might be looking at charges of manslaughter and driving under the influence. There are witnesses. She most likely would have gotten time." "And she would have deserved it," Robin replied, with an amount of anger on his face and in his voice that surprised Jean. "How old was the man who passed?" he asked. "In his 50s, I think. He and his family had literally just moved to the state yesterday. He and his mother were on their way to Target to pick up some things for their apartment. His mother was also injured, but she's going to be fine, the doctors told me. The doctor will be in to see you soon and take you to see the body to officially confirm your mother's identity. Mr. Randall, I'm very sorry." Officer Cordona nodded slightly toward Robin and Jean, holding her right hand to her chest, then turned and left the couple alone once more. Jean reached over to touch Robin on the arm, but he evaded her hand and moved to the other side of the room, pretending to look at the supplies on the wall over the hand-wash station. Jean started to say something, but caught herself and thought better just in time for Robin to spin around abruptly and say, "I hate her. I'm glad she's dead." His pupils were narrowed, and he seemed to be looking past Jean, who felt like a dart had just passed through her mind's eye. She softened and pressed her lips together, and she nodded her head in agreement. "I know, love, I understand," she chose to say. Robin turned his head slightly and looked at his wife with anger still on his face. "I don't want you to go with me to confirm her identity. I want to do it myself." The words stung Jean, but she didn't feel like she had any right to protest his wishes. Joan was, after all, his mother. "Okay," was all she replied to him, then approached him slowly and stood silently next to him until a female doctor with thick, long, dark, uncut hair pulled back in a sleek, low ponytail and no makeup came in to speak with them. "My name is Dr. Ahuja. Are you Mrs. Randall's family?" she asked in a professional tone of voice. "Yes," Robin answered. "I'm her son." "Mr. Randall, your mother was a very ill woman. Her liver was barely functioning, and she appears to have had Bell's palsy." "How long had she had the palsy?" "I didn't see anything about it in her medical records." "Bell's palsy? I don't know. I wasn't aware." Robin didn't even know what Bell's palsy was, let alone how long his mother had it. "Sir, when was the last time you saw your mother?" "Just this past Saturday. Why?" "Was there anything strange to you about her appearance?" "She was drunk and her makeup was smeared all over her face, but other than that, she looked like she always looked." "Why? What's wrong with the way she looks?" "Well, there are a couple lacerations from the accident, and her left arm was broken, but the left side of her face is drooping from Bell's palsy." "Was her face drooping on Saturday?" "Drooping? Her face? What? No, her face was fine. She's just a sloppy drunk." I see, Dr. Ahuja replied. Well, it must have come on sometime between then and now, because she had it when she passed. Are you ready to see the body? This is hard for most people, sir. I'll be fine. Can my wife stay here? Please, come with me. Ma'am, you can wait in the waiting room just outside the door where you entered the ER. A nurse will come and get you when we are through. Jean nodded and gathered her purse in front of herself and headed toward the waiting room while Robin and the doctor walked away in the opposite direction. Jean looked at no one as she made her way to the waiting area. She thought she remembered seeing it just before they got their visitors' passes. She also needed a restroom. Luckily, she didn't need to look far. There was a single-occupancy restroom across from the waiting area. When she came out of the restroom, there was one well-dressed older gentleman sitting by himself with his legs crossed and a hand on either armrest beside him. He was kind of sucking on the inside of his cheek and staring at the wall in front of him. He made no indication of noticing Jean as she settled herself in a chair on the other side of the room. She noticed he had a very unusual and fancy wristwatch. It was the most interesting watch she had ever seen. Under different circumstances, she would have made a comment of appreciation for the obvious work of art and craftsmanship, but she didn't feel like having conversations with any strangers at the moment. Jean sat down and looked at her white patent leather tennis shoes. They were Italian and really comfortable. Robin had briefly questioned the price, but stopped when Jean reminded him how much his new briefcase had cost, when there was nothing wrong with the old one. Gaze lost on her feet, Jean's cell phone began to ring. The man now glanced slightly in Jean's direction as she answered the ringing device. It was Gertrude. Jean, it's Mrs. Donovan from down the street. Hi, Gert. I knew it was you. Jean, have you heard from or seen Joan? She was supposed to be here a couple hours ago, but never showed up. I tried calling her, but she doesn't answer, and it's just not like her to be so late and not call me. Gert sounded genuinely concerned. Gert, I don't know how to tell you, so I'll just say it. Joan is dead. We're at the hospital now. There was a total silence on the other side, then a shrieking wail, like some animal was having its throat cut. Jean held the phone away from her ear, then brought it back as she heard Gert on the other end, breaking down into thudding, sobbing sounds. Gert, take a deep breath. I'm sorry. She's dead? You're serious? It sounded like Gert was on the verge of hyperventilating. Jean was kind of surprised. Jean, I loved her. We were more than friends. She didn't want anyone to know. Jean was stunned. She sat stock still, letting the confession sink in. She'd been right all along. An ironic smile crossed Jean's lips as she spoke softly to Gertrude. It's okay, Gert. I already knew. You did? Gert asked in a high-pitched whine. Yeah. Well, I suspected anyway. Robin was oblivious. Gertrude was now almost panting to catch her breath, and her nose sounded stuffed up. Jean, can I see her? I'll ask Robin, but I don't see why not. You are certainly welcome to attend the funeral, but Gert, right now I need to go. I will call you later today or tomorrow morning. Okay, dear, thank you. Jean hung up and breathed out hard as Robin came into the waiting room by himself, peeling his visitor's badge off, handing it in Jean's direction. Here, take this from me, he said as Jean took it from his hand. Is that all? Are we done? What's going on next? Jean asked her husband. She's going to be cremated. It's in her and Dad's will. She's going to be cremated and put in the vault with Dad's ashes at the mausoleum. The body will be picked up tonight and taken to Pixley's out in Rochester. Then they'll cook her and we'll be done. I already called Tim. He's not coming over for it. It's too expensive right now, and he's just glad to not worry about her anymore. Jean looked at Robin for a moment like she had never met him before. Gert just called, she told him. Oh, yeah? What'd that bat want? She's looking for your mom. I guess she was on her way to Gert's when it happened. Anyway, I told her Joan is dead, and guess what? What? Robin asked. I was right. They were a couple. What? Robin looked like he had just been slapped. Yeah, Gert was your mom's girlfriend, and not just a friend that was a girl. They were a romantic couple. Robin furrowed his brow and looked off into some imagined distance. Whatever. Let's go home, he said as he turned away from his wife and back toward the main lobby where they had entered the hospital. After they left the room, Dursick stood up and smoothed the wrinkles from his slacks and blazer before looking at the time on his watch and heading toward the ER. He showed the women at the station and desk his visitor's pass and found his way to Sylvie's room. She was stable, not critical as they had originally told Jean on the phone, but Mohan had been driving and hadn't been so lucky. Sylvie's clavicle was broken from her seatbelt, and she had a bit of a concussion from hitting her head on the passenger side window. Mohan had died of internal bleeding. They just hadn't been able to stop the bleeding. He'd been on blood thinners for the past 6 months after getting a checkup because of Sylvie's nagging. Dursick looked at Sylvie, who didn't turn to look at him as he walked in the door. There was a newspaper on the tray table next to Sylvie's bed, and she was leaning back, staring at the ceiling. Dursick sat down in a chair on the other side of the bed silently. "My boy's dead," Sylvie said, without looking at him or away from the spot on the ceiling. "Yes, Sylvie, he is." "It's just you and me now, Vortaka," Sylvie whispered. Dursick half stood up and leaned over Sylvie, kissing her softly on the forehead. "Yes, Fene, it is. Sylvie and Dursick." Dursick sat back in the chair and crossed his legs. Sylvie rolled her head to look at him. "Was it really Robin Randall's mother in that car?" she asked him. "Yes, Sylv." "It was," he answered. Sylvie mushed her lips back and forth a couple times. "All these years, Jaromir. All these years. And it turns out the entire world is smaller than our village was." Dursick stood up and leaned over Sylvie, picking up the paper from the tray table on her other side. She thought she could see tears in his eyes, but maybe she was mistaken. Dursick sat back down in the chair and shook the paper open. It was the real estate section of the Detroit Free Press. A couple ads were circled. "There really are some cheap houses in the city, Jaromir. They weren't lying about that," Sylvie said to him. Dursick just grunted and said, "Don't call me Jaromir." Sylvie laughed, a small kind of huffing laugh, and coughed. "I need a cigarette. I hope I can get out of here soon." Back at Gertrude's, Connor was out in the shop painting the latest bike. Gertrude burst in, hysterical and frightened the little old young man, grabbing him, hugging him, and crying, "My Joan is dead, Connor, my Joan." Connor hugged Gertrude awkwardly and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "It's going to be okay, Aunt Gert. Your nephew Connor loves you." Gertrude pulled away from him and smiled through her tears, touching his cheek with her right hand. Then she dug her hand into the pocket of her muumuu and produced a key, offering it to Connor. "Here, take this. It's the key to the Cadillac. You're going to be driving me around from now on. The car's still mine, but you can use it when I don't need to go anywhere. Tomorrow, I need you to take me to TJ Maxx. I'm going to need a new dress for the funeral." Connor took the key and put it on his key ring next to the key to Gertrude's house. "Sure thing, Aunt Gert. Whatever you need." The end. But not quite. We have an epilogue. Epilogue. 1 week later. Dursick took a deep breath and smoothed the front of his starched shirt with his right hand before opening the oak door and kneeling on the provided kneeler. The small chamber in the old church was completely wood and was saturated with that particular smell that old Catholic churches get after years of burning incense, waxing pews, and wiping down kneelers. The priest on the other side slid open a door, but both men's faces were still obscured by a screen. The only light in the space was emanating from a candle flickering from within an antique brass sconce behind the priest's head. The priest cleared his throat to encourage Dursick to begin. Dursick rested his folded hands at the wrist on the ledge in front of him and cleared his throat with a small kind of cough. The priest blessed himself, and Dursick hastily followed suit. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 49 years since my last confession," Dursick finally said. His voice sounded far away to himself, and he wasn't sure he was actually doing this or just daydreaming he was in a confessional. "Well, my son, it is a blessing to turn to God once again after so many years. The formality isn't what's important so much anymore. Please unburden yourself," the priest said earnestly. Dursick considered getting up and leaving. The priest sounded like he was barely out of high school, but when he began to rise, the priest opened the screen and showed Dursick his face, and saw Dursick's face in return. He was younger than the old man, but not so young as he sounded. Dursick swallowed and made out like he was just shifting his weight. He was, after all, a man of considerable physical stature, and the confessional was a small space. "Confession is confidential, right?" he asked the priest. "Yes, for me to violate the confidentiality of the sacrament in any way is against canon and not compulsory by civil law, my son." Dursick looked the priest in his eyes for an uncomfortable few seconds before finally speaking again. Neither man blinked, and the priest seemed unthreatened. "I killed the only woman I ever truly loved this morning," Dursick said low and deliberately. The priest didn't even flinch at the words. Dursick wondered how many times he had heard similar confessions in a city like Detroit, and felt, for the first time since he could remember, feeling like he might not have the upper hand in this situation. It is one of God's commandments that one shall not kill, but it is not necessarily a mortal sin depending on the circumstances and if you are truly repentant, the priest said in a strangely comforting tone. Her son died in a car accident a week ago today, and for the past 7 days she has done nothing, and I am serious when I tell you nothing, but cry softly with her face towards the wall and use the toilet. Nothing, I tell you. She's done nothing but sob softly. She sounded like my mother the last time I saw her, before the great devouring was finished, the last time I ever saw any of my family alive. There was nothing I could do to stop her crying, to stop her hurting, and besides that, I was still tired from the long drive we made across the country. I needed to be free of it all. She did too. She needed to be free even more than I. I was born 2 years before her, but somehow she was much older than even I, an old man in front of you am today. I couldn't let her live in a world like that, and she knew, I tell you. She knew, and she wanted my help. I saw it in her eyes. So this morning I got showered and dressed, and then I held a pillow over her face until she stopped moving. She didn't even fight me. She held my hands as I pressed the pillow down. Then I packed all my belongings into a bag and left her there in the quiet, Dursick said, while the priest watched him placidly. Does God forgive me? Are you truly sorry? I am truly sorry for every day of pain in her life. I'm sorry I never told her I loved her out loud. I'm sorry I didn't kill her husband when I found out what kind of man he was. But no, I am not sorry for ending her pain. If you aren't sorry, why are you here? The priest pressed. Dursick was surprised. It wasn't what he was expecting the priest to say, and he wasn't sure how to answer. He wasn't sure he knew why he was there. I don't know. I guess I felt like I needed to tell someone about this one, but she was the only person in my life I would have ever told about this. Well, my son, I'm not sure I can offer you absolution at this time. That is something that is between you and God. You may find solace in daily rosary, or a bottle, the priest offered kindly. Dursick's knees were starting to go numb, and his mind flashed back to his mother as she wept in front of his childhood home in the village with his father's arms wrapped around her shoulder, one of the only times he saw his father offer his mother any type of affection. The image of his mother seemed to blend and morph into the face of Sylvie in his mind as the priest finished a prayer and blessed himself, telling Dursick he was free to go. Dursick stood up and maneuvered awkwardly from the small space back into the narthex of the church. He stopped briefly at the door and considered the small dish of holy water before dipping his hand in and blessing himself. There was a locked donation box mounted to the wall next to the holy water. Dursick slipped his father's watch from his wrist and dropped the priceless timepiece in the slot and disappeared back into the world. I do believe that there truly is room for compassion for all beings. I truly believe that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the novel.